Okay, I want to talk today about research ethics. Basically, the idea that it's the scientist's responsibility to make sure that the rights of the research participants are protected. This is very important. Scientists need the research participants to be able to gain knowledge about psychology. So we need to make sure that their rights are protected. And any institution that sponsors research, including LA College for that matter, has an institutional review board or an IRB. And this is a group of individuals, a committee that makes sure that everybody who conducts research at this institution follows ethical guidelines that minimize the potential harms to participants. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that subjects can never ever be harmed. You might be doing research on a particular kind of drug that has side effects. Well, subjects might be harmed by those side effects, might make them sick. But bottom line is, you as a researcher need to do everything possible to minimize the possibility of harm, and the IRB needs to enforce that. So on this page we have a link to the LA College IRB if you want to take a look at it. The American Psychological Association has specific guidelines which deal with how the rights of research participants should be protected. So, for example, one of the most important is informed consent should be documented. Basically, this is when informed consent is necessary. Really, especially necessary when there is a potential for harm that the participants might suffer. Maybe the harm could be the losing, maybe that their name could be released to the public or something that could be harmful. It could also be harm, like I was saying, like side effects from a drug. It could be maybe some study that involves, pricking you with a needle or something like that might cause pain. Basically, if you're going to be in those kind of circumstances, you need to be fully informed as to what you are going to be experiencing, and you need to be able to have be able to know what you're getting into before you get it, and you should be documented. You should be told exactly what you're going to be experiencing. You should be able to essentially sign it. Now, informed consent can be waived if there is a minimal likelihood of any potential harm. Then, the IRB could decide that you don't necessarily need to get informed consent. Risks limited confidentiality must be claimed. Sometimes you might be doing an anonymous survey. And in that case, there's really no way that your name is going to be attached to your survey. So in that case, there's really no risk for, the confidentiality. But there might be a certain case where the people who are involved in the research know who you are. So for those people who are going to see your data, that should be explained before a person agrees to participate. Some colleges, especially the big research universities, require that students participate in a certain number of research studies in order to be able to get a passing grade in the course. They need to do a course requirement. The purpose of this is so that the big research institutions need a lot of subjects, so it's encouraging, perhaps strongly encouraging students to take part in it. But there might be people who, for various reasons, do not want to participate in those research studies. There needs to be an alternate activity, maybe like writing a paper or something like that, so they can do that instead of taking the course, instead of doing the research studies, rather. There are certain cases in which deception is used on the part of the experimenter, where the researcher does not want to reveal everything to the subject. Maybe the researcher wants the subject to behave naturally, to not try to be a good subject, so to speak. and give the experimenter what he or she wants the subject to behave normally and act naturally. And in that case, the researcher might do something that involves discussion. And there are certain times, discussion should really only be used when it's absolutely necessary. There might be circumstances, and we'll talk about some examples in a little bit, where if the subject really knew what the study was all about, so if they were fully informed before they began, they would not act normally, and the study would not work. The study would only work if subjects were deceived. So you have to be very careful about using deception, but don't use it when it's absolutely necessary. But if you do use deception, you must have a debriefing, which occurs after the study is completed. This is where the subject is basically told everything that went on, explain why the deception was necessary, kind of make sure that they're okay, make sure that they understand everything, and they're walking out, satisfied that they were not treated unfairly, that they learned something from the study, and so that they can go off without any kind of without any kind of negative emotion. That's the purpose of the debriefing, and that's a very important aspect of, and it probably should be done even if you don't use deception, is to kind of just close out with the subject and talk about what happened and be able to let them move on. Now, animal research is also an important part of psychology, and a controversial one too. There are a lot of people and organizations who believe that animals should not be used in research because animals cannot give informed consent. You see this little rat running through this maze? Well, this little rat can't say, I don't want to participate. The rat is essentially forced to participate in the research. Furthermore, the animals, after they're finished being used as research subjects, they are, almost always destroyed. And again, this is, so there's a lot of animals essentially being killed in the name of research, but a lot of important research gets done both in psychology and medicine and many other fields that use animals. So it's a controversial issue. I'm not going to say which is right and which is wrong. It's up to the learner here, wherever you believe is the right way to go. But nevertheless, even for those who say that animal research is necessary, there are nevertheless some guidelines. It's only about 5% of researchers, so most researchers are not using animal research. Rats and mice are used about 90% of the time. But there are some standards of care, for example, in terms of housing that is humane, getting regular feeding so that they're not underfed. And again, they're put in circumstances they have physical and psychological well-being. So they're not kept in horrible environments where they're under a great deal of distress. So, animals can be kept in a kept humanely, and that's the responsibility of the researcher. But again, a lot of research, what we learn about psychology comes from animal research. Research on learning, again, like the rat learning how to run through the maze. Research on certain kinds of drugs. You want to test certain drugs on animals before you put them into humans if you fear that side effects could be severe. So again, it's important research. Again, whether or not you believe it is ethical, it's a controversial issue. As a student of psychology and as a citizen, you need to realize that what you learn in psychology, what you learn about statistics and research methods, is a really good thing to carry with you. It allows you to really kind of be a wise consumer. You want to be skeptical. You can also be open-minded. You want to be skeptical. You should be very careful about, believing these fantastic claims that people make. You have to be very skeptical. You can still be open-minded. Keep in mind the possibility that, maybe something that you always learned and always thought was true maybe isn't so true anymore. And you can always keep an open mind about changing your mind, but nevertheless be skeptical about these fantastic claims. Realize that a lot of times people will generalize to the group just from an anecdotal individual experience. So be very careful about generalizing from what somebody says about his or her experience, whether it comes from, quitting drugs or losing weight or getting mentally healthy, whatever it happens to be. One person's experience does not necessarily mean that it is going to be the case for the population in general. So be careful about generalizing from single anecdotes. And again, what you call pseudoscience fits in with that. Pseudoscientists rely on those individual claims, those individual stories. And you can see it in TV commercials about people who say about how this drug is a miracle drug to help them lose weight. You'll see those 10 people in the commercial telling you how to help them, but you won't see the 250 people who it did nothing for. You want to avoid overgeneralizing the results. And again, that's related to what we were talking about here. You may get one finding in one study, but realize that one study does not tell us everything about the world. Even a well-designed scientific study, even a well-designed placebo-controlled double-blind study, the hallmark of clinical research, even if that study yields significant results, one single study with 20 or 30 individuals in the study does not necessarily mean it's going to be true for the entire population. One single study is good, but maybe additional studies would be useful to verify that, to strengthen the findings. Look for converging evidence. Just one single study that seems to be different from everything else there. You got to be skeptical of that. You got to be skeptical when one study just bucks the trend and goes against what you always thought. It may be intriguing, and it may require some further investigation, but be very careful about just looking at that single study. Look for evidence that supports that too. Be very careful about people making claims about causality. This is a big one. This is a huge one. Everybody, when they see two variables going together, they say, well, therefore, this causes that. And so when you see people, so you say, children who are, the children of divorced parents, if they have various kinds of problems, like with depression or anxiety, right? So you're going to say, there you go, see, divorce causes depression and anxiety in those kids. So we've got to ban divorces now. And you've got to stay married for your kids, because if you get divorced, your kids are going to get depressed and they're going to get anxiety. So you better stay married, you people. Well, that's not very good advice, especially if you're in a situation where you're a married couple who is abusive in the relationship. Or, again, with people who have irreconcilable differences, they shouldn't be forced to stay together. But again, the idea is you're making these wild claims about cause and effect, really. That divorce causes this and divorce causes that. Well, there may be an association with it. There may be a connection. Yeah, maybe you can predict that the kids of divorced parents are going to have some problems. But you really cannot experimentally confirm the cause and effect of that. Okay? There may be a lot of other factors other than just the divorce that could be responsible for what's going on here. So be very careful about those claims of causality, because it could lead to accepting policy changes, for example, that are just misguided. Finally, you can also consider the source. Realize that oftentimes, you're going to be receiving a message from somebody. Their persuasive message is going to be something that is, the person making the claim wants something from you. Oftentimes they want you to empty your wallet to try to buy their product. And you have to consider the source. Is this product really as good as they say they are? Say it is, because they just want me to buy it. They don't necessarily care whether it works for me or not. They just want to make their money. So as a result, you have to be very cautious about accepting the claims made by others if that other person has an agenda. So that's something to keep in mind. So again, thinking like a scientist, kind of take these things into consideration. Being very skeptical, but also keeping an open mind, and recognizing that your deeply entrenched beliefs, some of them may be wrong, and some of them may not be based on good evidence. You've got to be willing to consider changing some of those beliefs. And again, be very, be willing to, use evidence to support your beliefs. Interesting, the textbook brings up, again, one of the themes in the textbook is health and wellness. So, each chapter will talk about different, examples of, the topic that relates to health and wellness. Well, this can be shown in the research methods chapter 2. The idea that you can use the scientific method to answer some interesting questions about health and wellness. So, for example, in the book they talk about how survivors of a spouse who died via suicide or an accidental death, they had different health outcomes. The survivors whose spouses committed suicide were worse off. And one of the things that they were suggesting is that maybe, and that has been seen, is that the survivors whose spouses committed suicide, they were much less likely to talk about it. But the ones who died by accident, they talked about it a lot. And maybe the talking about it may have something to do with the health outcomes. Maybe talking about it more might lead to better health outcomes. And again, they did research on it to confirm that, and they showed that yes, the studies when you put into the condition where they were writing about it, talking about it, they did better than the subjects who were not. So again, it just illustrates how you can run an experiment to test what you might have noticed about certain behaviors, and you can actually put it to the test experimentally. Furthermore, they just did a follow-up. There was a follow-up from somebody else where they looked at it as far as like expressive writing and how people can just who write about the trauma they experience actually have better health outcomes. So in other words, people who experience trauma, the research seems to show that writing about it expressively actually is associated with better health outcomes. So, and again, you can look at it and doing it using the experimental method allows you to actually isolate cause and effect. You can say that the writing caused those differences in health outcomes, and it's a pretty strong case for making. Okay, now we talked about deception before, and we talked about how there might be circumstances where deception is necessary in order for the study to work, so to speak. So maybe there are some circumstances where deception maybe is necessary, but maybe the study shouldn't be done in the first place. And we'll talk about an example of that in a bit. Let's talk about Asch's study on line judgment. Imagine you are in a circumstance where you are asked to look at some lines on a screen, just like you see here. Here's the standard line and here are the comparison lines. Your task is to pick one of the comparison lines, which one matches the standard line. And you do this for like several trials. I show you several screens, and you pick the standard line. You pick the comparison line to match the standard line. So obviously in this case, the comparison line is B. B is the matching one. And this is fine. This is an easy judgment task. But what happens if you took this, you were sitting with a group of people who were taking the same test, and you saw, now first, for the first few trials, you saw everybody's getting it right, you're getting it right, easy. Then you're seeing that one person is giving clearly the wrong answer. The next person gives the same wrong answer. The third person says the same wrong answer, and now it's your turn. Well, what are you doing? You're looking at you saying, they're wrong. So now what am I going to do? Well, you're in that kind of circumstance. You're going to look like this guy over here. If you're in that kind of circumstance, you say, what are they looking at? Am I seeing anything right? So you start questioning yourself. But then when you see, of course, they're wrong and I'm right. Now you have to think, are you going to conform and go along with the group, or are you going to give the correct answer? And it turns out that the study used deception because this study was not about the judgment of mind. It was about whether or not you were going to conform to what the group is saying. Whether or not you were going to go along with the group and give the clearly wrong answer, or whether you're going to go out on your own and give the correct answer. So what? Well, 37% of the time, participants went along with the clearly incorrect majority. They conformed. And only 25% of the participants never conformed. So it's a powerful, powerful force, essentially, that influences, the influence of getting you to conform, even though you know you're doing something wrong, even though you know you're saying something wrong. This is conformity, and that's what it's about. Again, if you experience peer pressure, you know about the power of conformity. You start conforming with what the group is doing. In many ways, we all need to be able to conform somewhat with the people around us. We can't all be just doing our own thing. We can't say, I'm going to be my own man and I'm going to pass red lights from now on. Well, you pass red lights, you're going to get killed and kill other people. So we all have to conform somewhat to society. But obviously you shouldn't do it all the time. Nevertheless, 50% of the subjects conform for at least half of those presentations, and the rest only did it on an occasional basis. So you see that it was a powerful influence, and different people reacted differently. Some people never conformed, other people conformed a lot, other people conformed a little bit. So this is true for all of us, that we all can have it. Now this study used deception. Could this study have been done if the subjects were really told that it was really about conformity? I want to point out that in this particular study, the other subjects were really Confederate. They were essentially paid by the experimenter to clearly give the wrong answer. I want to make that clear. So really there's only one true subject here. But now in this case here, could the study have worked without deception? The answer really is no. If you were told, this study is about conformity, see whether or not you'll go along with the group. Well, if everybody in the group gives the wrong answer, I know, I'm not supposed to go along with the group, I'm supposed to give the right answer. There you go. The study would not work. Now the question is, that poor guy, and well, the other subjects in the study who participated in it, they may have felt foolish in their circumstances. They may have felt uncomfortable, being pressured to conform. But they did have a debriefing and they were informed about what happened. It doesn't look like in this case any real long-lasting harm was done. There are other circumstances in which research is done in which there are some really big ethical issues, ethical violations, or ethical questions that really need to be addressed. One of the things that you should consider, again, during World War II, during the Holocaust, you think of Dr. Joseph Mengele doing all sorts of what I guess you'd call it research on concentration camp inmates. Oftentimes he's very interested in twin research, but he was subjecting these people to horrible pain and suffering for his experiments. And obviously, since they were prisoners, they did not have the right to refuse participation. So this is so these are some of the bad things. The Tuskegee Syphilis Project used deception in a very cruel way. This happens right here in the United States of America. In this case, 4 African Americans who suffered from syphilis, which was a very serious sexually transmitted disease that is many people die from. And the researchers wanted to kind of have a greater understanding of the progression of the disease during the different stages of it. And they, invited these 4 African Americans to participate in their study, in which they said they would give them medicine for treating their syphilis. But in reality, they were just giving them a placebo. Because they were not interested in curing them. They were interested in testing to see how the progression of disease and studying them in that way. So a lot of people died of syphilis thinking that they were getting treatment for it. And even more cruelly, to put the icing on the cake, even after a cure for syphilis, an antibiotic cure was found for it, the study continued. It went all the way into the 1970s before it was stopped. This is a study sponsored by the federal government, and a lot of people died from it. So that was pretty bad. And again, I have links to all of these on that you can investigate yourself. The Willowbrook Hepatitis Project. In this case, there was an institution, a mental institution, where hepatitis was really an epidemic there, and the head of the institution wanted to study it, basically distinguishing between hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and he said, well, we wanted to have subjects who had hepatitis. So he basically took subjects who did not have hepatitis and infected them with hepatitis without their consent, without their knowledge, to have them participate in his study. And his reasoning was that, well, they were going to get it anyway, so I might as well do it for research purposes. So that's pretty scary as well. Okay, now we're going to talk about another controversial research study, and this is Milgram studies on obedience. In this case, no one was physically harmed, but it was a pretty controversial study that has found some shocking results, but also, caused a lot of controversy. Basically, you can read about this in the textbook, read about it in the link that I provided in the previous slide, that in this particular study, subjects were told that it was a study about teaching and learning. You were going to be randomly assigned to either the teacher or the learner. And if you are assigned to be the teacher, your goal is to ask questions to the learner. If the learner does not answer the question correctly, the teacher has to press a button on a shock machine that would give the learner a shock. After each successive wrong answer, each time they get something wrong, the level of the shock would increase. And the teacher sat next to a machine that had these different shock levels, starting from 75 volts, all the way up to 450 volts. And it starts with a label that says mild shock, then moderate shock, then danger, severe shock, and then finally XXX. Very ominous looking shock machine that the teacher would be administering shocks to the poor learner who was strapped down into a chair in another room. Now, what happened in the study was that the subject was always assigned to be the teacher, and the other subject was really a Confederate who was strapped down as the learner. So it was always just one subject. The other one, the learner, was the Confederate. The subject would read off the questions, the learner would give answers, and the learner would purposely give the wrong answers at specified times. When they did this, they would then pretend to be hurt by the shock. In reality, nobody was actually shocked. But here are some of the protests that the learner was saying. So like 120 volts, hey, this really hurt. 150 volts, experiment, that's all, get me out of here. I told you I had heart trouble. My heart starts bothering me now. Get me out of here, please. My heart starts bothering me. I refuse to go on, let me out. Well, at this point, the subject, who is the teacher, now turns to the experimenter and says, well, now what do I do? The guy says he wants to quit. Well, now, the experimenter says that they have to continue. And the purpose of this study was to see whether or not the subject would continue on. And so in the next slide I'm going to show you some of the prods that the researcher used to spur the subject on. So the experimenter would say, please continue, please go on. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice, you must go on. So when the subject, who is the teacher, refuses to press the shock because the other guy was saying, get me out of here, get me out of here, well, the experimenter who's standing right next to him says, please continue, please go on, whatever. And what do you think happens? Do you think that most people quit? Do you think that most people said, I'm not going to shock this man. He says he wants to get out of here. I'm not going to shock him. Well, guess what happened? Turns out that 65% of the subject went all the way to the end, 450 volts. Even after the subject had stopped responding altogether, presumably unconscious or perhaps even dead. So this is really shocking, no pun intended, how many people would commit these potentially deadly acts just because an experimenter told them to. So this was a very, very interesting. In fact, nobody stopped below 300 volts. So everybody in the study went all the way up to 300. Everybody, even after the guy said, let me out of here, continued on. But eventually some people stopped. Bottom line is, you can create a circumstance where people will obey an authority and do some pretty bad things. There are many historical examples of this. In the military, in terms of like group dynamics, in terms of like a group of teams who do something really bad, maybe obeying an authority, obeying what the team group leader says to do this, in gang violence, and many examples of this. So this is pretty amazing that these results happen. And this study used deception because subjects were not told that it was about obedience to authority. They were, and of course nobody would obey the authority. They were told about teaching and learning. They thought they were being good subjects, doing what the experimenter said to try to help teaching and learning. But what they were doing was potentially engaging in cruel behavior. And the problem with this, the ethical problem with this, is that the people who were subjects, they thought that they were doing something harmful. They thought that they were perhaps killing somebody. Now, there was a debriefing afterwards where the learner, again, all those responses that the learner made were recorded. The learner would come back out and shake hands and smile and say everything was okay. So at least the subject went away thinking, okay, at least I didn't kill anybody. But maybe there was some long-lasting psychological harm. I wonder if those individuals got any sleep that night, knowing what they did. They might have been killing somebody just because an experimenter in a lab coat was standing next to them. So it highlights how a situation can cause somebody to really behave in a potentially harmful way. And recognizing that, I think, is an important lesson to learn. That the idea that we're all capable of this. These are not horrible people who did this. These are normal, everyday people who participated in the study. This, perhaps, and there have been some recent replications of this study. They didn't go all the way up to 450 volts, but recent replications that showed that people pretty much behave the same way now as they did then. So it was, it's pretty disturbing to know that, but nevertheless, I think it is useful to know that, we can learn to rise above that, so to speak, but recognize that we're all capable. And it turns out that he didn't just do one study, he did many different studies with using this paradigm. And he found that there are certain circumstances which made obedience much more likely to occur, and other circumstances made it less likely to occur. For example, when there was a control condition in which the experimenter did not give any commands, obviously the learner stopped, rather the teacher stopped, when the learner told him, I want to get out of here, then there was no obedience. The subject basically said, alright, I guess that's it. Also comparing males to females. Is there any difference between males and females? No. Women were just as likely as men to be shocking all the way up to 450 volts. If the study was done in an office building, there was a little bit less obedience because maybe it wasn't seen as a really scientific laboratory. If it was just an ordinary person in charge, yes, there was a lot less obedience. It wasn't the experimenter, the powerful experimenter. If the experimenter was in another room talking via intercom, there was also a lot less obedience. Okay? He was going to catch the way the mice would play, that kind of thing. If the victim was in the same room as the participant, there was also less obedience. If you saw the victim there suffering, you're going to be less likely to participate. Another condition in which the participant was actually told, the teacher was told to actually press the learner's hand down onto the chalk plate. And this was another variation of it. There was still like 30% obedience, which I think is pretty incredible. But it was less obedience than the baseline condition. Finally, something else, and this should be something that is really something to remember. When two Confederates, other subjects, basically refuse to go on, so when the subject, the teacher, the subject sees other subjects say, I quit, I'm leaving, it gives the subject a lot more courage to do the same thing. Same thing happened in Asch's study with the lines. When there was a Confederate who gave the correct answer, even if anybody else said the wrong answer, one Confederate said the right answer, then the subject is much more likely to also give the right answer. subject will have what is called an ally in dissent, a friend who is also going to resist. And therefore, you're not all by yourself hung out to dry. You are able to you have someone, a friend who you support. Same thing in the obedience studies. When you see other Confederates rebel, you do the same. Then you feel comfortable doing so as well. So again, the next time you are in a circumstance where maybe you're being influenced by your boss or your co-workers to do something that you know is wrong, recognize that you can resist this authority, and maybe somebody else who's there too, maybe they want to resist also. And maybe they're just waiting for somebody else to resist. Maybe you could be that person to resist an unethical order. Good luck.